all good people are asleep and dreaming.
This what I feel like. Yeah.
I would like to talk about traditionalism since it's becoming a movement of sorts. Here, let me read you something I saw on 4chan the other day. I've suddenly had quite a sad realization, Paul. 4chan and this board in general has always tried to be controversial, to oppose social norms, to push the limits, and to be edgy. It has always challenged mainstream notions in politics. Now this dark and lowly part of the internet has come to support family, God, chivalry, tradition, and pride in one's own heritage. What a sad and dark world we live in, where moral degeneracy is so rampant that supporting these things is actually now edgy and controversial. Yeah, I agree. It's definitely an interesting phenomenon. I guess I'll start with talking about what traditionalism is. The word is associated with a bunch of different movements, but I'm gonna talk about it in the context of our modern times and what it means as a philosophy and lifestyle. And I want to prelude this by saying that I've actually never thought about the things that I wanted in life as traditionalism because it was so intrinsic to my Eastern European culture, and the qualities I saw in the couples that were successful around me actually, in retrospect, exhibit those traditional qualities. I was at Anarchapulco and I met that guy T. Check out his channel, I'll link it below. And he actually just flat out asked me like, hey, are you trad? I'm like, what's trad? And he's like, traditional. I'm like, oh, well, yeah, as far as I understand, I am, I guess. I never thought like, oh, I'm going to be a traditionalist when I'm older. I just knew the things that I wanted. Marriage in my 20s, children, several children that I stayed at home with as a housewife, as a stay-at-home mother, an educator. I wanted a man who is passionate about his work. I wanted a man who is comfortable with the more old-fashioned archetypal version of male and female, of masculinity and femininity, because guess what? That's what works. I think part of traditionalism, a big part of it, is acknowledging that in difference there is unity. And I look to my parents again when I think about this. My mother is very typically feminine, very social. She will remember people's stories, faces, and names without even trying. And my father is a lot more introverted, a lot more nerdy, and he, his interests are something he can sit with a book for hours and be totally satisfied. He doesn't have that social aspect to him as much as my mother does. He's also much more science and math oriented, and my mother is much more language oriented, and there's some crossover. But my point is, I'll tell you about their business. So they run a business together, and my mom naturally filled the role of the front of the house, and my father naturally built the whole entire damn thing with his hands, and he did it all by himself. And a lot of our customers, they come in and they start estimating like how much money my father must have spent to get contractors to work on that location. And it's really funny to me because maybe it's this new generation or maybe it's Canadian people, but they can't comprehend that one man could build this entire building and make it a thriving business basically by himself in terms of the physicality of the structure and the walls and the style. And the decision to make that risk, to put our savings into this, after 10 years of struggling financially, that was his decision, and my mother backed him up, although she was very scared and fearful. And that's like a perfect example of masculine versus feminine. And then, since it's been up and running, my mother is who the people come to see. I mean, they come for the service, but they come to see my mother because she's their therapist and she's their friend. And she's just the person that they look forward to interacting with when they're there. And like when I work front of the house, and like, okay, I'm a young, decent-looking girl, and you would think that like the men would come to see me, or my sister, and it's like no, they come and they're like, where's Valentina? And it's really funny because they just want to see my mom. It's really cute. Anyways, the point of that story is if my mom and my father didn't fill those opposite masculine and feminine roles, I don't think they could run that business very well. They would have to hire a lot more people. But because they're such opposites and they complement each other so perfectly, they were able to thrive. So another way I can talk about this is what traditionalism is not. First, I'll give you a breakdown of like the perfect traditional timeline, right? So boy meets a girl, he has a vision, he has a work ethic, and he has the confidence to achieve his vision. And the woman is not damaged by, years of promiscuity, and also has a vision for her family and home life. And they come together, and the woman doesn't move out of her parents' house until they are at least engaged and preferably married. Okay, this is some advice for women. Do not move in with your boyfriend, because you will coexist until your ovaries start to dry up and he will leave you for someone younger. It's like the more drastic example of why buy the cow when you get the milk for free. Like, do not live with your man if you actually want to marry him eventually, because he probably won't. And for men, my advice for you when looking for a woman, pay attention to the kind of language she uses. There's a lot of entitlement language, like, oh, your past doesn't define you, it's only about the present.
There's nothing more important than staying true to yourself. Despite my past, that does not define who you are. Despite your future, who you choose to be every single day when you wake up. You deserve to be fought for. Yeah. You are worthy of love. Yeah. It doesn't matter your shape. It doesn't matter your sexual past. It doesn't matter what you have done. You deserve a man who loves you for who you are.
Then what have you learned? How are you different?
People really don't care about what you do. They care about who you are.
You should never feel ashamed of what you do with your sexuality. That is your choice. The majority of America knows Liz to be someone that slept with Nick, and I know Liz to be someone that builds wells in orphanages around the world.
It only matters if you're a good person, and it's like all these convoluted ideas. Like, obviously the past defines who you are to some degree. So that kind of reassurance language, it exudes guilt, like a guilt complex in a woman, and that she has to like self-reassure because of that guilt. And I know a lot of people feel, especially a lot of men feel like there are no women, like good women left, and there are. You have to be good enough to attract them. Sorry. It takes a little while to find them. Most people aren't that awesome. Most people aren't that great. So when it comes to anything, like when you're hiring for a job or when you're looking for friendship, it's difficult to find it sometimes. It's difficult to find the right fit. This isn't specific to relationships. It's like generally hard to find good people to be around. I guess the easiest way is, does the woman know what she wants? If she wants kids and a family, and you know that she's in the mindset where she can be happy raising those kids and supporting you emotionally while you're working and providing for the family. Like, if that is her goal, and if even better if it's like intrinsic, like just like it was for me, that she didn't have to find this thing, traditionalism, and like claim it as her identity. If it comes rooted from her family style or her family life, that's even better. There's some people that are like, oh, marriage is slavery, and like, oh yeah, why would you work for a woman? Okay, if you want a family, the best option is for your woman to stay at home with the children when they're young at least. First of all, it cuts down on the opportunity to stray, and you have someone to come home to feed you, to take care of you. And there's the statistic rate of the most suicide in America are single men, and it's devastating. And you know what a part of it is? Male friendships are centered around activities they do together. They're not centered around like sharing feelings and providing a support system to each other, while female relationships are almost purely for support. And that's just the way that our brains have evolved due to the difference in our physicality. So single men are extraordinarily more at risk for a suicide, because when they're really depressed, they literally have no one to talk to except their family, and sometimes they don't have a good relationship with their family, and it ends in suicide. That's not the only factor, but it is a huge contributing factor just because of the way the brain works. So yeah, married men live longer, and I feel bad for the women as well. I know that when I was growing up in Canada, and as early as middle school, I was completely bombarded with the idea from both, from media, from my peers, from the general attitude of people everywhere, that being promiscuous is just A-okay. It's just a thing to do, and that's what guys like, and that's what you should like too. I remember in high school I was talking to some girls. They were actually 2 years younger than me, and they were saying how many sexual partners they had, and when they found out how many I had, they were like, what? Only that many? Like, they couldn't believe that I haven't had sex with loads of people, and they had. And I don't think it was a judgmental thing or like a self-defense thing. I think they were like honestly surprised that my numbers were so low. And so like this whole like slut shaming thing, like, does it exist? I don't know. I personally think we should bring it back. Like, I think shame as a concept can actually bring around world peace. Like, if people felt shame more about more things, we would have a much better society. So, girls, when someone says to you, like, oh, the only thing that matters is your character, your value is your character, the amount of sexual partners you've had actually defines your character, and detracts from your value, because it signals to men that you're not going to be monogamous with them and you're not going to be faithful, so why should they marry you? And that's the way that our brain evolved. I think having a healthy sexuality and being sexual and exuding sexiness is actually part of being feminine, and there's a difference between being promiscuous and having a good sexual life. You can have a good sexual life and a good attitude towards sex with one partner. A stripper could be a virgin. And since I was just a little bit mean to the girls, I gotta balance it out, be mean to the boys. Grow up. 30 is not the new 20. Grow the fuck up. A lot of men complain about not finding a wonderful, like, chaste girl. And chaste is probably asking a little too much in this day and age, but you know what I mean. You have to offer something to her. The men who get these women are the men who deserve to get these women. It's not a rigged game, okay? You work for everything in life. So, yeah, stop complaining. Get a passion, and if you don't feel like it, if you're happy with what you have or what you don't have, that's fine. Like, not everybody can be ultra successful. You can still find a girl like on your level, but you can't expect like the traditional barefoot singing in the kitchen woman with no previous sexual partners. If you're like sitting at your parents' house with loads of student debt, like, that's not gonna happen. Why would she marry you? She can marry someone who can actually support her and the family she wants. Why does one need marriage? Can't you have a fulfilling, loving relationship without marriage? Oh, I don't need a piece of paper to define my relationship. This is like the arguments that I've been dealing with since high school. And what I've always said was, marriage is a public proclamation of your intentions and your love for one another. It's really easy to just live together and be like, oh, you're my boyfriend, you're my girlfriend. That's the ceremony and the process of that ceremony and the steps that lead up to that ceremony. Asking the father for the woman's hand in marriage, planning the ceremony or the wedding, and going and having witnesses present when you say those vows to each other, whatever your traditional ceremony of marriage is, because they differ vastly, and doesn't matter. Like, the details don't matter. It's those big concepts that matter. That means that those two people have thought this through enough that they showed up to this location with these people that they trust and love them, that love and trust them, and they're willing to look each other in the eye and say, I want to be with you, and I'm dedicated to you, and I want to have your children, I want to have family with you, and it's totally without that, I don't think the relationship means that much in terms of its longevity. Like I said, anybody can move in together and coexist. Like that, like you just move out. If you're still missing the point, I really suggest you think about it a little deeper. People use it as an excuse as well, right? Like, they don't want to have that finalized relationship identity. And women, you pay attention to this, because if you have a man and you've like co-lived with him for 6 years and he just go, I don't know, I don't believe in marriage, leave him. Oh, well, we're doing everything that a married couple does anyways, we're just not married. The difference is, in one scenario, they did nothing, and in the other scenario, they married you. Pretty big difference. The men who say marriage doesn't matter just want to stay bachelors, and the women who say marriage doesn't matter just haven't found a man who wants them enough, and it's an excuse for their underachievement in that space. Damn, that sounds really harsh. I hope that Generation Z can bring it back, because, you know, the men feel totally irrelevant and cast aside and unimportant, because the women are independent. They're doing things for themselves. You know, they're go-getters. They have the high-paying jobs, and they can still complain about not having even higher-paying jobs. And then they hit like 35 or 40, and they leave those high-paying jobs anyways, because they're desperate to have a family, and some of them are able to have a family, and some of them die alone. I'm being really mean. Well, some of them just keep going through cycles of men because they want someone their age, and the men their age are going to be dating women 5 to 10 years younger than them. That's just the way that they're wired. And also, you're going to have much healthier children with a woman in her 20s than a woman in her 30s. That's just biological fact. I don't care how many women's studies classes you take and how much feminism you've swallowed. Your body still adheres to the rules of the world, and every single thing, every single syndrome and negative thing that could happen to your child during development skyrockets statistically past 32, I believe. A lot of people don't see the value in traditionalism because they don't want kids. And I think that's very beta and short-sighted, because when you don't have children, you die in the most real way. Unless you are so accomplished that your accomplishments and name have been etched into the stone of history, you die, and your genes don't pass on, and your name doesn't pass on, and your memory doesn't pass on. Stay real, like focus on the realities of life, not all of these fairy tales that modernity has sold you. People did it right. People did it right for a long time. Don't throw that away. Our ancestors were not stupid.
Hold up. Don't judge me. My mama caught me with a strap. Don't judge me. I was young, fucking other rats. Don't judge me. Aim it at your head for a stack. Don't judge me.